Richplanet TV is sponsored by shopholistic.co.uk, bringing you quality detox and natural health products at affordable prices.
Welcome to Richplanet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Before we continue with the next John Hanson interview, I would like to make an appeal for information. Just over 2 years ago in the northeast of England, Raoul Moat was let out of prison. A few days later, he shot and murdered 29-year-old Chris Brown. He then shot his ex-partner, Samantha Stobbart, in the stomach, who luckily survived. About a day later, he shot Police Constable David Rathband, a traffic officer who, as part of his routine, was parked on a roundabout on the M1. Then, for 6 days, Moat went on the run and was eventually killed during a standoff with Northumbria Police. So, why am I bringing this up? Well, if you attended my recent speaking tour, you will know exactly why I am bringing this up. I am bringing this up because I am convinced the mainstream media have told lies about PC David Rathband. I now have this on record by somebody who was very close to PC Rathband. Richplanet TV has some very interesting information about the case which suggests there was a lot more to these events than has been put out in the media. Intrigued? You should be. Now, I would like to appeal to viewers who have first-hand knowledge of, or who know people who have first-hand knowledge of any of the following. Now, when I say first-hand knowledge of, I mean something which is not based on the lies you may have read in mainstream media. Firstly, do you know anything at all about PC David Rathband? Do you know anything about his meetings with Lisa French? Lisa French was a passenger injured during the 2005 London bombings. Do you know Lisa French? Or do you know anyone who knows about her involvement with David Rathband? Do you know anything about Northumbria Police's Chief Constable, Sue Sim? Do you know if David Rathband was in any way involved with Chief Constable Sue Sim? Perhaps you work for Northumbria Police and would like to speak to Richplanet TV about what you know. In total confidence, of course. If you know anything at all about these individuals, please contact us at richplanet.net. I await your correspondence. By the way, if you are watching this online in Northumbria Police, please remember to forward the link to your colleagues. On with today's show, here's UFO researcher John Hanson.
Great to see you again.
Now, last week we spoke about your books, which are entitled Haunted Skies, and there are several volumes covering from 1940 all the way up, well, you're up to
1970, well, we're up to producing 77 very shortly.
And there are hundreds of UFO cases that you have investigated and documented within those volumes.
There are indeed, yeah, probably too many.
And this is an ongoing project, encyclopedias which basically chart the major UFO cases in the UK.
That's correct.
Now, I noticed in the beginning of your second volume, which covers dates from 1960
to 65.
1960 to 65, that's volume 2, it's just pictured there behind John. In the beginning, you've got a letter that you received from Lord Hill Norton. You'd obviously written to him, asking him to do a preface for the book, I take it, is that?
No, I wrote to him because even during that stage, if you like, of development, we were certainly interested in his, the reason behind his interest in the Rendlesham Forest case, December 1980. And I was intrigued as to why, where his interest had come from, because as you know, he asked questions in the House on a number of occasions about UFOs. And I was curious, and that's why I contacted him. But I think he found me a thorough nuisance,
Right.
as can be judged by some of the letters that he wrote back to me. In fact, I've got one here that you haven't seen, but this is December 1999, where he said, I'm 84 years old. I lost half my sight about a year ago, can no longer drive a car. Reading is difficult. I simply do not know what you want, 200 or 300 words. So you actually were right when you said about trying to get some information about a preface. And then he said, what about, for heaven's sake? I have about 30 hardback UFO books on my shelves, let's say nearly 1 million words. What on earth can I or anyone else usefully say about this matter in a few hundred? And then he says, I cannot comment on your text because I have not seen it and do not wish to do so. I have just written a foreword to Timothy Good's next book, and it took me 5 weeks to read his book before I could put pen to paper. And then he mentions about the Reverend Paul Inglesby, who actually I met at the Red Lion pub opposite some years previously with regard to my involvement in UFO concern. But that is another story.
Right.
And so I don't want to go off at tangents with that.
So Lord Hill Norton was Admiral of the Fleet.
It was the Lord Hill Norton, wasn't
Right.
it? The Admiral of the Fleet, yeah.
So what is that, the head of the Navy then?
Essentially, yes.
So it's the highest person
Certainly
in the
one
Navy.
of the highest positions within the Navy, yes.
Right. Okay, so it's not. Would he be referred to as a chief of staff or not? Is that?
I suppose he would do, but as I've said to you before, he obviously he was curious about UFOs, but
He
of
wasn't
course
in
he
the
may
loop.
not known a lot about
Yeah.
UFO.
But he was thoroughly interested in it, as he
He
mentions
was,
in
yeah.
this other
Well,
letter.
he must exactly, for him to have written a foreword for Tim's book and to have been consulted. Clearly, he felt that
He
was
says in
innocent.
this letter to you,
Yeah.
my position is, and
Oh,
always,
right, yeah.
and always has been, that there are physical objects, almost certainly not man-made, regularly detected in Earth's atmosphere. I want to know what they are, who or what is directing them, and what is their purpose. I have no objection to you quoting these words as attributable to me. So
You haven't quite finished.
you will see from the head of this sheet that you demoted me by 3 ranks, though this does not matter to UFOs.
That's right, yeah. So at least to be fair, at least he wrote back.
Right.
But I do have a very interesting story about Lord Hill Norton, which I certainly won't go into now, but that took place in the 1980s when
All right.
he
So,
met, but there's another matter, another
Right.
story.
Is this where he supposedly met an extraterrestrial?
Well,
Is it linked to that or not?
there is. You're right there. You've
All right.
you've
See,
surprised
but
me there.
you don't want
You've
to.
surprised me there. Yeah,
you
I
don't
know
wanna go
all
on camera
about
with
that.
that.
Yeah, that was. Well, that's a guy called David Daniels. I think we're on because didn't realise you knew about that matter. But that was a guy called David Daniels who was taken to see the Lord Hill Norton by Brenda Butler, and David Daniels. As I understand it, he was a shapeshifter. Now, I have no evidence that he was a shapeshifter. He said he was a shapeshifter, and I know that he has stayed in the United States with Wendell Stevens.
Right.
But there's a big, long story about that involving all sorts
you
of
don't
things,
wanna-
which I don't want to go. There's
don't
no
wanna go
point
down
going
there.
into that bit at the
Because
moment.
Timothy Good has said that Lord Hill Norton allegedly had a 2-hour meeting with an extraterrestrial arranged for him by someone in the military, I gathered.
Oh, right. Well, we were talking at complete cross purposes there.
Right.
But I've thought that you were talking about the David Daniels case, which is interesting because according to Brenda Butler, who's no reason to lie, Brenda says she took him it would be 1984 to meet the Lord Hill Norton, who was very interested, not in Brenda or the Rendlesham case, but was very interested in David Daniels. And Brenda will tell you that herself. So the fact that she took this guy to meet the Lord Hill Norton defies a little bit of belief, but it happened.
Who was an alleged shapeshifter.
Well, he was an alleged shapeshifter. I think it was from Sirius or something.
Do you have a view on that?
Not really, no.
It's
I mean,
just,
I've never met the guy. I know that the story is that he eventually left the country. I tried my best to find him. He certainly was brought to the attention of the security services in the States. I don't know about England.
One thing you can say, Lord Hill Norton clearly from these letters had an absolute thirst for knowledge about UFOs, and obviously with someone in his high-ranking position, he would be able to pull strings.
Well, he would be privy. He would be privy in the same way that Lord Dowding travelled to the States. As you can see, there's an ID card in volume when he travelled to the States to examine files on UFOs. And I can tell you that the reason I know that is because Lord Dowding's stepson, I won't mention his name, I see no point, but he was very helpful to us, and he provided a copy of the ID card and knew about what his dad had been doing. So,
and was Dowding head of the RAF?
He was, yeah, during the Battle of Britain.
Yeah, there's quite a famous quote from him. Basically, I don't know the exact quote,
but of course, you know, with all due respects, and it is fairly obvious, isn't it, from the amount of information that's in these books, that so many people have seen something inexplicable in the sky. So many people have, we're not talking about lights in the sky, we're talking about inexplicable saucer-shaped objects or triangular-shaped objects that, going back to the 1940s, and people are not getting confused. People aren't mistaken. These things are there. So is it no wonder that people like Lord Louis Mountbatten and it's alleged Prince Philip himself was extremely interested? And why not?
My impression was that Hill Norton was tried to get, this is what Timothy Good relayed to me, that Hill Norton did have a certain amount of
clout,
influence, but his influence wasn't enough to be able to get to see the top secret stuff. That was the impression. Well, he was frustrated that he couldn't get to it.
It wouldn't be. I mean, I said to you this morning that, and I certainly would not adopt a militant attitude towards the MOD or authority as such, but it's clear, as I've explained in these books, that if you want to learn about UFOs and you want to find out what's happened, it's no good examining the declassified MOD files, because they've been declassifying them for years. Probably like yourself, I've waded through them. You just tell me the answer to this question. Why is it very, very few of those reports relate to what's in these books?
Yeah.
So what's going on here?
Something that John and I was discussing earlier, that if you look at these files, which are a representation of the research that you've done over the years, they're not reflected in the UFO reports that are released.
They're not found.
Supposed, well, they call them secret files, but they're not secret files. No. There's not one secret file among them. That's the point.
That's right.
So they are, for me, and I go even further than that, I just say they're a psyop. They're a psychological operation to convince the masses that there's nothing to UFOs. But that comes under the guise of releasing the information. And hey, look, there's nothing to it. But that's
well, of course,
BS.
There is.
Yes.
And I've always said I'd be the first to say I don't know if these things are representative of any alien incursions onto our planet. I firmly believe that they've been here for a long time now, and I can't say to people, I don't know if if the aliens rule the planet. I don't know if there's 17 or 18 different breeds of aliens. I don't know. All I know is what I've uncovered. And then you've got to look at the evidence and you've got to form your own conclusions from it. Yeah. But by God, there's something out there that we're not being told about.
And for those who didn't see last week's show, John, you served as a police officer for how long?
27 and a half years.
And then you joined CID?
No, I was 15 years in uniform.
Right.
And then I was 15 years or 14 years in CID.
Right. So you're used to working with witnesses and statements, and
right,
spotting people who are lying, etc.
Well, sometimes it's very difficult to spot a con man. I have to say that myself. Okay. But you can only generalise. You can only carry out your own evaluation and analysis of people. In the same way, we sit together and talk, but we hadn't met prior to this. But you would, in your own mind, carry out your own analysis of me. Because that's the way that it works. Yeah. But I think we're getting to a stage where we understand each other.
Yes.
And I think we've got common goals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the second volume of your series, as we said, covers from 1960 to 1965. So you've selected a few cases, John.
I have, but what I should just say is that my recollections of that book firstly, would certainly consist of the a very interesting case that took place not too far from Stratford-upon-Avon, involving some very strange marks that were found in the ground. And there was a number of researchers were involved in that. I think one was David C. Jones from Cheltenham, who I've been in touch with.
And what year was this, John?
3rd of June 60. 3rd of June 60. This was two black burnt rings were found by farmer Bill Edwards.
Okay.
In a field at Poplar Farm, Even Load. And these related brought to the attention of the Cheltenham-based UFO researcher David Jones, who, with a guy called Arthur Constance from Cheltenham. I never had the pleasure of meeting Arthur. I wish I had. Very clever man. He had something like over 1 million newspaper cuttings on UFOs when he lived in Cheltenham. And after he passed on, I dare say there was a big bonfire. But what happened to all that stuff? But these were certainly interesting circles. It was thanks to John Dennis Llewellyn, he liked to be called Dennis rather than John, from Stratford-upon-Avon, who ran a group there, that Dawn and I met over the years, and he supplied us with some cracking photographs of his wife Ruby with a pram next to the crop circle and the marks themselves. So that was certainly.
So we need to I'll just interject here, John. We need to draw a distinction between a crop circle which has been a pattern which has been made by something specifically with the purpose of making a pattern. What you're talking about is marks from a landed craft.
That was the inference from John Dennis Llewellyn.
Because I believe the word crop circle didn't come into being.
Well,
until...
this is the problem. We all refer now to the crop circles, but some of the most fascinating circles were the simplistic circles. It was a burnt ring, which was they were very prevalent in the 1960s. But apart from if you like those circles, those early circles, there was also a heck of a lot of incidents that took place in this country where huge scoop marks of soil were taken out the earth, and this was quite common. And a lot of those cases would have involved the bomb, the bomb squad that would go and could think a bomb had been buried there or something. But like the Charlton crater of '63, that's a classic example. But so many cases like that where right out in the middle of nowhere, vehicles couldn't have got there. But and Brenda Butler herself knows of one case where a lot of soil was removed out of these, leaving these punch holes in the ground. So, yeah. So I'm going off again at a tangent there.
Was this the case with two concentric circles?
It is, yeah. So
just tell us about that.
Well, they formed two apparently perfect circles. The inner circle was equidistant from the outer, and he says that David Jones, he paced the outer circle, found it 23 feet in diameter. And he said that the grass on the edge of the imprint was showing definite indications of burning, but no burning in the control areas. But it's a similar story. But we've heard of circles in concrete. We've heard of circles in the trees. Anything and everything. Even one police officer told me about a circle in the tarmac in Matlock, Derbyshire, a burnt circle when he was on nights. Stopped and saw a burnt circle in the tarmac. Well, a huge circle. On Earth would cut a big circle into the tarmac, but it's another story that's been forgotten. And
so you think that some of these would be evidence of landed craft? Do you think that?
Certainly, I would say that there are evidence of UFO incursion, of a UFO or whatever causes these marks is due through UFO interaction. But of course, I mean, I've been looking at the Robert Taylor case of '79. That's certainly an interesting case where Bob Taylor came across the objects in Decmont Woods, and there was all these there was all these really weird circular marks. And I think if he hadn't seen this mind-shaped object which cut his trousers, if he hadn't seen that, Probably history would have maybe recorded there was some strange circular marks found in the woods, and we'd have forgotten all about it. But of course, he saw these objects. So
Right.
who's to know then?
Mine-shaped, you said?
Yeah, shaped like mines with spikes sticking out of them. But we have reports from people who've seen things like that coming out the sea.
Right.
But anyway,
all right then, John. Well, we're going to go for a quick break, and after the break, we're going to discuss more cases from Volume 2. I'm going to be hosting one final Rich Planet 2012 speaking event on Saturday the 29th of September in Dunston Gateshead, just off the A1 motorway at the Power League football venue. This is a daytime event, doors open at 10:30 AM, tickets are just £6 and this includes a free buffet lunch, free parking and a bar is available. During the day I will be revisiting the issues covered in the May presentations, along with some additional new information on the Rowell Moat shootings, the latest on the Wilson and Blackett murder attempt, and the unreported bizarre cases of UFOs and animal abduction being ignored by our mainstream media. Full details and tickets are available on the richplanet.net website. There's a limited number of places, so get your ticket now for just £6.
Rich Planet TV is sponsored by shopholistic.co.uk, bringing you quality detox and natural health products at affordable prices.